There's one thing few people realize immediately after being betrayed by a narcissist: that their silence is not a sign of victory. It's the beginning of a sentence from which they cannot escape. They may walk away as if nothing happened, with no regret, no hesitation. But behind that calm facade lies a chilling, quiet truth, a psychological crisis they themselves dare not face. In this video, we will peel back each layer of the mask and uncover the deep internal consequences the betrayer must endure. Consequences that require no punishment from the outside, because the very act of betrayal has already planted the seeds of their inner collapse. And if you've ever asked yourself, do they really get away with it? Then the answer here will make you see everything in a completely different light. This is not just a story about betrayal. It's a journey of reclaiming your personal power, inner peace, and true worth. If you're seeking healing, truth, and a deeper understanding of the narcissist psyche after the harm they've caused, then don't take your eyes off this video. Hit subscribe and watch until the end, because the final moments will deliver an awakening, not for them, but for you. Part 1, Betrayal, doesn't set anyone free. It is the beginning of an invisible prison. There's a truth you must remember, not to seek revenge, but to awaken. When a narcissist betrays you, they don't win anything. What you see, the coldness, the indifference, the emotionless stare as they walk away, is merely the final mask, tightly fastened over a soul already rotting from within. They don't walk away unscathed. They've just become better at pretending they're not in pain. But betrayal isn't about external consequences. It's an internal earthquake, one that erupts within the betrayer, whether they realize it or not. Don't be fooled by appearances. Betrayal may seem like a calculated move, a strategy to gain the upper hand, but in reality, it's a symptom of an identity crisis quietly raging within. A narcissist doesn't betray because they're strong. They betray because they're weak, because they cannot face real intimacy, emotional accountability, or the vulnerability it takes to sustain a genuine relationship. And the betrayal, which may appear like an escape from commitment, is actually the tightening grip of a self-destructive spiral they can't break free from. Betrayal is not just an act that harms another. It's a fracture within, where the betrayer begins to lose their ability to live authentically. For a narcissist, image matters more than inner morality. But after every betrayal, they cannot escape the truth. They've shattered the trust of someone who once truly cared. And that's not just a wrong against you, it's a crack in the very architecture of their own identity. A person might dodge social consequences, but they can never escape psychological ones. You don't see them look back. But that's not because they forgot. It's because they're too afraid to face what they've done. Looking back would mean confronting a truth their ego refuses to acknowledge, that they are untrustworthy, that they destroyed something sacred and irreplaceable. Every time they turn away, they leave behind a piece of themselves, their ability to trust, to connect, to love authentically. And what's worse, they know it, but they'll never say it out loud. When someone betrays a person who once loved them unconditionally, an internal reckoning begins. No matter how much they deny, justify, or shift blame, there's a part of them that cannot be extinguished: the conscience. And a conscience suppressed for too long does not disappear. It becomes a haunting ghost, whispering in the quietest moments that they didn't just lose someone else. They lost the last part of themselves, still capable of redemption. You think betrayal was a blow to you? It wasn't. It was a direct blow to the core of the one who betrayed. No one betrays and remains whole. No one deeply wounds another and walks away with a clean soul. The narcissist may dress it up, new relationships, polished words, surface-level success, but each repetition of betrayal chips away at their true self. Betrayal doesn't free them. On the contrary, it traps them in a never-ending cycle. Always seeking someone new to feel worthy, always manipulating to feel in control, never stopping. Not because they are free, but because they are running from themselves. And that's why you, the one who was betrayed, should never see yourself as a loser. You didn't lose, you lived authentically. You had the courage to love, to trust, to hope for the best in someone else. And if you're hurting, it only means you're still capable of feeling, still in touch with the sincerity of your soul, something the betrayer lost long ago. So next time the memories come rushing back, the emotional stare, the cold voice, the firm steps they walked away, remind yourself they didn't walk away victorious. They walked away carrying a burden they'll bear for the rest of their life. A prison without bars, but with walls built from avoidance, deceit, and shame. And you are different. You are not chained by falsehoods. You are not haunted by masks. You still have the power to rise, to learn, and to love again. This time, from a place of awakening. Part 2. The mask has fallen, and they are the first to know. When a narcissist betrays you, they don't just shatter trust, they inadvertently fracture the very image they've spent their life desperately trying to uphold. Because for the narcissist, the most important thing in life isn't love, honesty, or responsibility. It's image. They don't live to be good, they live to appear good. And betrayal, no matter how they try to justify it, leaves a stain on that image, especially in their own eyes. Even if no one condemns them, even if no one exposes the truth, they know. They know they've crossed the line, not out of morality, but because their fragile ego feels the fracture. Betrayal isn't just an action, it's a silent confession that they are not as strong, not as admirable, not as in control as they've spent their life pretending to be. It's a quiet, damning realization. I failed to uphold the illusion I created. And there is nothing more terrifying to a narcissist than the moment they realize this. They'll never say it, but they know. They feel it. Deep within the buried layers of their consciousness, there is an echo. The mask has slipped, even if only slightly, and that alone sends them into a frenzy. They begin to spiral, lying more, manipulating more, rewriting the narrative with delusion and distortion, not just to deceive others, and they'll tell themselves, I betrayed them because they didn't deserve me. They'll convince themselves, I wasn't wrong, I did what I had to do. And in the most shameless cases, they'll even crown themselves the victim. Why? Because admitting the truth, even just a sliver, would unravel the entire illusion. For the narcissist, image isn't just a tool. It's their only reality. Losing that image means facing their true self, an identity they've buried, rejected, shamed, and vowed never to meet again. That's why they can't let the mask fall any further. They will do anything to hold it in place. Even if it's cracked, shattered, and unrecognizable, they will paint it over, glue it back, nail it down. They'll construct entire stories, relationships, and surface-level successes just to keep that mask intact, the very thing that once made them feel important. But there is one truth they can never erase. They were the first to see the crack. And from that moment on, they are never at peace again. They live in constant fear of exposure, not because you might call them out, but because they can't forget. They fear the look in someone's eyes that sees through the facade. Fear that a single word, a glance, a question could collapse the entire illusion they're clinging to. From here, their psyche begins to distort. They become hypersensitive to the slightest criticism, quick to anger when doubted, and increasingly unmoored from reality. They can no longer tell the difference between what's real and what they've fabricated just to survive. Reality becomes warped. Self-worth is replaced by the need for control, and any hint of remorse, if it ever existed, is drowned under layers of rationalization and denial. It's tragic. Betrayal doesn't make them stronger. It begins the erosion of their inner world, where pieces of their character begin to rot. The confidence they project is just the hollow echo of a self that's cracking beneath the surface. They may continue to live, to work, to fall in love, but they'll never again truly trust themselves, because they know the truth exists, and that truth rests in their own hands. Like a ticking time bomb, they are forced to carry for life. So if you've ever thought they hurt me, but they seem completely unaffected, think again. They don't need you to punish them. They are punishing themselves, quietly, relentlessly. There is no sentence more brutal than the one borne by someone who knows the truth, but must live as if it never happened. Keep living authentically. Your honesty is the very thing they could never face. And if you're walking away from that relationship carrying pain and questions, remember this: you weren't the one wearing a mask. You were the one brave enough to live in truth. And in the narcissist world, that is eternal strength. Part 3, the loneliness they can't escape, the price of betraying themselves. In the moment they betray you, the narcissist may believe they just claimed ultimate power, control, false moral superiority, or even some silent victory. But what they don't realize, what might take them a lifetime to understand, is that they've just severed themselves from the most sacred gift a human being can possess: genuine connection with another soul. No one betrays another and still retains the ability to truly trust. To betray someone, especially someone who once loved them unconditionally, is not just an act of harm. It is a declaration to themselves: I am no longer trustworthy. And once a person loses trust in themselves, they cannot trust anyone else. It is a prison not built by others, but forged within. an invisible wall between them and the rest of the world. Narcissists often live in a cycle of suspicion and manipulation, but after betraying someone who genuinely trusted them, that cycle no longer serves as a tactic. It becomes a paranoid state of survival. They begin to see the world through a lens of constant doubt, not because others have wronged them, but because they know they are capable of betrayal. They begin to measure everyone else by the yardstick of their own deceit. This is when the loneliness begins to corrode them from the inside. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from a lack of friends, but the kind that lives in the middle of a crowd, where every gaze is suspect, every gesture is filtered through a haze of distrust. They may surround themselves with new people, smile, laugh, host loud parties, but in their heart they trust no one because they no longer trust themselves. And here lies the bitter irony. They thought betrayal would free them from the burden of intimacy, but in truth, they chain themselves to a lifelong sentence, separation from the world of real emotion. They step into a life filled with control, but void of connection, where every relationship is transactional, every I love you is calculated, and every act of kindness demands a return. Not all of them realize this immediately. Some even feel elated after betrayal, as if they've reclaimed control, as if they've escaped something. But with time, their new relationships begin to lack depth, truth, and trust. They no longer feel safe, not because someone else is hurting them, but because they know they are unworthy of trust. That unworthiness, no matter how skillfully concealed, eventually seeps out. It shows in their hypersensitivity to criticism, their explosive anger when questioned, and the discomfort they show when someone looks them too deeply in the eyes, because they are afraid. Afraid that one day, someone will truly see them, a person distorted by their own betrayal. The loneliness they carry is unlike any you've ever known. It isn't circumstantial. It's the result of forfeiting the ability to connect. And worse still, they must go on pretending that everything is fine. They must continue to look desirable, admirable, successful, but deep inside, they are yearning for the very things they destroyed with their own hands. Safety, trust, belonging. You might think the narcissist has forgotten you, moved on from you. But what you don't know is you still exist within them, not in their heart, but in the void you left behind. They can replace you with someone new, but that relationship will never be real because they no longer know what real feels like. And that falseness ensures they will always be alone, even in a room full of people. This is not temporary loneliness. It is a lifelong punishment. For once you break trust through betrayal, you don't just lose another person, you lose your ability to belong to anyone again. So if you're on the road to healing, if you've ever been betrayed so deeply that it made you question your worth, pause and remember this. You are still capable of love. You are still capable of trust. And that makes you the true victor. For them, no matter what they say, no matter who they're with, no matter how polished a mask they wear, they will continue to live inside the isolation they've built with their own hands. A cold, unreachable space where no one, not even themselves, can touch their heart. Part 4, no one needs to punish them because they're already living their sentence. There is a sentence that no courtroom needs to declare, no judge needs to speak aloud. It is the sentence of the conscience. Silent but sharp, quiet but unrelenting. And when a narcissist betrays, no matter how much they deny it, no matter how desperately they flail within their illusion of power and control, one truth remains. They have become a prisoner in the psychological prison they built with their own hands. You may have once believed they walked away untouched, that they were cold as if they never loved, as if you never mattered. But know this, that coldness is not peace. It is a survival mechanism, a mask worn by someone bearing a burden they cannot face. Because human nature, wounded, distorted as it may be, still carries an awareness of right and wrong. And deep down, even a narcissist knows that betrayal is wrong. They know they crossed the line of decency. They know they compromised their character for the illusion of control. But instead of remorse, they chose escape. They chose suppression. And in doing so, they set off a quiet form of self-destruction. No one needs to speak a verdict over them. Because the buried shame, the suffocated truth, that is the heaviest sentence. Every day, they must live as if nothing happened. But inside, they know the mask is cracked. They know that if someone were to discover the full story, everything will crumble. And so they exist in a constant state of defense, like a soldier who never gets to sleep. And what happens when someone lives in a constant state of defense? They lose all sense of peace. Every new relationship is haunted by the ghost of the one they destroyed. Every glance, every question, every moment of closeness is filtered through suspicion. No one is truly trusted. No one is truly heard, because within them the fear of being exposed never sleeps. They don't lie awake because you're exposing them. They lie awake because their own conscience is. No one is watching them, yet they live as if everyone sees. They control every narrative, rewrite every memory, manipulate every explanation, not to protect their reputation, but to outrun the collapse they feel inside. And the cruel irony, the more they try to bury the betrayal, the more betrayal is required to keep the illusion alive. One lie demands another. One performance needs more actors. One facade of control requires more fear, more justification, more new people to prop up an old, crumbling image. But what they're desperately trying to protect no longer exists. They can't rebuild who they once were, because they never truly were that person. Betrayal doesn't just shatter trust between two people, it exposes the fraud that existed beneath the surface all along. It forces the betrayer to face the most terrifying question of all. If no one can trust me, then who am I? And that question is never answered honestly, because to answer it, they would have to admit they were wrong. And a narcissist would rather lose everything than admit fault. Not because they're simply arrogant, but because their entire identity is built on never losing. So don't believe they walked away unscathed. The truth is, they were wounded the moment they chose betrayal, not because they loved you, but because they trampled over the last human piece in them that could have redeemed them. And once that's dead, there is no way back. You don't need to wait for some external justice, because internal consequences always arrive first, and they strike the hardest. No one can live in deceit forever without sacrificing something. And in the case of the narcissist, the price is peace of mind. And you, the one who was once the victim, don't let yourself become the avenger. The deepest form of justice is not watching someone else suffer. It's watching yourself rise, grow, and walk forward without carrying the past like a weight. Don't go back to prove anything, because the truth is, you don't have to. They already know. They have always known. They just can't bear to look at it for more than a second. But you who dared to love fully, to trust honestly, to live truthfully, you are the one who is truly free. You don't need a sentence declared for them. They're already living in it every single day. Part 5, they learn nothing because truth is the enemy of a distorted ego. Truth to you may be light, but to the narcissist, truth is intolerable, not because they don't know it, but because they cannot bear anything that threatens their already fractured ego, patched together with illusion and denial. And that's why after betrayal, they learn absolutely nothing. No remorse, no transformation, no awakening, because to learn from a mistake is to admit one was wrong. And that is something a narcissist simply cannot do. You might imagine that after everything, they'd sit in solitude and ask themselves, what did I do? How could I hurt someone who trusted me so deeply? But the truth is, they can't even sit still, because the moment silence creeps in, the voice of conscience begins to whisper. And instead of listening, they leap into distraction, a new person, a new excuse, a new performance, anything to avoid being alone with themselves. A narcissist cannot pause to reflect, because reflection demands a trait they've lost: self-honesty. They can't accept their wrongdoing, because doing so will destroy the image of perfection and invincibility they have worked so hard to construct. So instead of learning, they run. They run into the arms of someone new. They run into empty praise. They run into roles where they're once again the victim, pitied, believed, forgiven. Again, and here's the terrifying part. Once betrayal becomes their way of avoiding the mirror, it's no longer an isolated act. It becomes a lifestyle. Every time they betray, manipulate, or rewrite the story, they reinforce one internal mantra: I'm not wrong. I'm just doing what I need to survive. And with every repetition, they drift further from any capacity for growth. Do you see them repeating the same patterns in their new relationships? It's not because they can't recognize the damage. It's because they lack the courage to face it. They cannot enter the process of true growth, one that requires humility, repentance, and a desire to repair, because all of those threaten the fragile armor they cling to for psychological survival. When someone betrays a person who loved them sincerely, they don't just hurt that person, they send a dangerous message to themselves: I can do harm and avoid accountability. For the narcissist, this message repeats so often it becomes a replacement reality, a twisted truth where they are the victim and those who suffer because of them deserve it. And so the cycle becomes a ritual. They manipulate, then justify. They wound, then deny. They betray, then repaint the narrative, casting you as too sensitive, controlling, or emotionally unstable. This isn't just about protecting an image, it's how they survive. Even if that survival is hollow, what they don't realize is that every repetition pulls them deeper into darkness. Refusing to learn doesn't keep them safe, it pulls them into a downward spiral, where every betrayal requires more lies, every manipulation grows more vicious, and every relationship ends in the same familiar collapse. They think they're gaining control, but in reality, they are being controlled by their own ego, an ego that won't allow learning, admission, or growth. So instead, they stagnate, repeating the same tragedy with different faces in different places, but always with the same script. The saddest part, they could learn. Anyone can, but the first requirement for learning is to face the wound. And the narcissist refuses. They turn away. They pretend there's no pain, no fault, no reason to change. And by doing that, they forfeit the only chance they had at becoming whole. You can't force them to learn, and you don't have to. What you can do is learn for yourself. Learn to see clearly who is capable of change and who isn't. Learn to stop placing hope in those who flee from truth. Learn to set boundaries that protect you from returning to a cycle that once devoured your heart. The narcissist does not learn after betrayal, but you can. And you, through healing, awakening, and learning to love yourself again, you will break the cycle they can never escape. Part 6. With every betrayal, their capacity to love is eroded. The narcissist may believe they're stepping into a brand new chapter after betraying you. They might wear the cloak of confidence, enter a new relationship, hand in hand with their next target, as if the past never happened, as if the pain they inflicted left no trace on their soul. But the truth doesn't live on the surface. The truth is buried deep in the silent decay within them, where every betrayal is another cut, severing their ability to love for real. Real love requires courage. It demands vulnerability. It asks you to stand in the light of truth, unmasked, undefended, and without control. But every time a narcissist betrays someone who loved them sincerely, they push themselves further away from that possibility. They stop believing in intimacy. They lose the courage to open their heart. And worse, they stop believing they deserve real love at all. Betrayal doesn't just destroy trust between two people, it dismantles the emotional structure of the betrayer. With every lie, manipulation, and betrayal of someone who loved them, they send a dangerous message to their own soul. I don't have to be kind. I don't have to be honest. I can get what I want without truth. And from that message, something within them starts to die. First, it's emotional callousness, then disconnection, and eventually every relationship becomes just a stage performance. No real attachment, no empathy, no depth, just a transaction, status, sex, control, or social image. They no longer know how to love because they've lied too many times about being in love. And the irony? They still demand loyalty from others. They still want to be respected, adored, admired, but they cannot return those things. They ask for devotion, but can't give presence. They hope for love, but when love arrives, they distort it, question it, or destroy it. Because deep down, they know they are unworthy, and that knowledge terrifies them. They destroy beauty before it becomes real. Because if it's real, they would have to be real too. And being real is what they fear the most. Don't be deceived by appearances. Don't let the curated photos, the party smiles, or the winning gaze fool you into thinking they're thriving, because inside they've lost the ability to enjoy anything fully. Every win is a shadow. Every relationship is a script. Every sweet word is a test. Will this person be easy to control? Will they stay if I pull away emotionally? And the more new people they pursue, the more empty they feel. Because real love cannot grow on the soil of betrayal. It needs truth, it needs time, it needs the courage to stay, even when vulnerable. But the narcissist has no patience for that. They want instant results, instant control, They want to be loved not as who they truly are, but as some idealized version of themselves, flawless, untouchable, perfect. And so they don't just destroy relationships, they destroy their own capacity for connection. Betrayal isn't just an action, it's the consequence of a self that no longer remembers how to trust love. When you look back, you may still feel the pain. You may still wonder. You may still ask, did they ever truly love me? But what you need to understand is this. Even if they once did, every act of betrayal didn't just hurt you. It damaged a part of them that was once capable of loving. They didn't just lose you, they lost themselves. And you're different. You still have the capacity to love, to feel, to heal. That is the difference. That is why you are rising while they, no matter how it looks, are sinking deeper into a world of illusions and fracture. Because with every betrayal, the capacity to love is eroded. And one day they'll realize no one truly connects with them. No one truly understands them, not because others are cold, but because they built too many walls made of lies. And when that day comes, if they ever become conscious enough, they might cry, not for losing you, but for killing with their own hands the last part of themselves that knew how to love. But tragically for the narcissist, that moment usually comes too late, when every bridge is burned and all they have left are the echoes of what could have been love. Part 7, you didn't lose, you awaken. There's a truth very few will tell you after you've been betrayed. You are not weak for having loved wholeheartedly. You are not foolish for having trusted. And you are certainly not the loser just because you offered sincerity to someone who was never worthy of receiving it. You loved someone you believed was capable of loving you back. You were patient. You forgave. You tried to understand the wounds they carried. You didn't enter that relationship to play games, to gain power or to win. You entered it with your heart. And that is never something to regret. What hurt you wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that your love wasn't valued, that your efforts were dismissed, that your gentleness, your loyalty, your quiet sacrifices were met with ingratitude and disregard. But let me say what your heart needs to hear. Their betrayal does not define your worth. It only exposes who they truly are. Don't let their wrongdoing become a verdict you pronounce on yourself. Don't lock yourself in questions like, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Or worse, did I deserve this? Because when you put yourself on trial for someone else's guilt, you extend the damage far beyond the moment of betrayal. That betrayal isn't a reflection of who you are. It's a mirror showing who they chose to be. Someone who ran from growth, chose manipulation over communication, destruction over healing. You did not deserve that. Not then, not ever. And the fact that you believed in them, hoped for something better, that wasn't a weakness. That was courage. Today's world often tries to convince us that if we've been hurt, we should become cold. That if we've been lied to, we should stop trusting. But that's the lesson of fear, not wisdom. True growth is knowing the risk of loving and choosing to love anyway. Knowing trust can be broken and still opening your heart. You were hurt, but you can still feel that pain. That means you're still connected to your deepest humanity. But them, the ones who betrayed you, may no longer feel anything but the emptiness they've created. They live in a loop of soulless relationships, layered lies, and a hollow identity that constantly needs defending. But you, even after falling, had the chance to rise, and to rise stronger. Because the loss you experienced can become the foundation for a more grounded, more authentic version of you. One who no longer seeks approval from others. One who no longer turns a blind eye to red flags. One who no longer sacrifices herself just to hold on to a love that wasn't real. Awakening doesn't mean you've stopped loving them. It means you've started loving yourself more. It means choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, walking away, not out of defeat, but because you realize that love should never cost you yourself. And you know what? Most beautiful. You can still love again. Not like before, not blindly, not out of emptiness, but from wholeness, from wisdom, from a deep self-respect that refuses to offer your love unless it's met with something equally true. The one who betrayed you may live their whole life under the illusion that they got away, but the truth is, they lost someone capable of real love. They lost you. But you didn't lose anything. That cannot be reclaimed. You can rediscover your confidence, restore your belief in love, reclaim your voice, and above all, reconnect with the worth You never actually lost. You just forgotten it was there. That is victory. Not proving them wrong, not wishing them pain, but refusing to let the pain turn you into someone you don't recognize. Keeping your heart intact, keeping your spirit open, choosing the light after walking through the dark. So don't carry their betrayal as a lifelong wound. Carry it as a mark of awakening, a reminder that you deserve better, and you will receive it, not by chance, but because you had the courage to let go of what was never worthy of you. You may have once believed that the narcissist's betrayal was the end of something beautiful, but the truth is, it wasn't the end of you. It was simply the end of an illusion that love could exist without truth, loyalty, or respect. And when that illusion collapsed, you didn't lose your worth, you reclaimed it. They may have left without an apology. They might be with someone new now, rewriting history, telling the world they did nothing wrong. But you don't need to argue with lies. You don't need to prove anything, because the truth always finds its way, not through noise, but through the quiet strength of your steps forward. Remember this: your sincerity, your kindness, your deep capacity to love, these are not weaknesses. They are exactly what make you different and far stronger than they ever realized. The narcissist could never see your true self because they viewed you through the lens of control. But today, you have started seeing yourself through the lens of awakening. And from where you stand now, amid wounds that are healing, you get to choose to not live in bitterness, to not close your heart just because someone failed to cherish it. Because if you allow betrayal to rob you of your faith and love and goodness, then you don't just lose them, you lose the radiant future still waiting for you. You are not here to witness someone else's collapse. You are here to build a life of meaning, one where you no longer beg for affection, no longer trade your dignity for acceptance. You deserve a love that doesn't require you to shrink yourself to fit someone else's emptiness. And if something in this video resonated with you, if your heart trembled even slightly, if you saw yourself reflected in these words, then please subscribe to this channel, because this isn't just a place to listen, it's a space where you can be seen, be understood, and be reminded you are not alone. And don't forget to stay with us until the end, because ahead of you there's still so much to heal, to rebuild, and to love again. This time, more fully, more wisely, and more truly than ever before.